we are still factoring each polynomial completely. If the polynomial is not factorable, we're going to write prime. What we notice on problem number 7 is that there's no number in front of the x squared, at least not written. So it's 1 times 96, which is 96. And there's lots of factors of 96. It's 1 and 96, 2 and 48, 3 and 32, 4 and 24, 6 and 16, and 8 and 12. And the thing about this one is that there's two sets of possibilities. 4 and 24 will combine to be 20. 8 and 12 will combine to be 20. But in order to get 20 with the 4 and 24, we're going to have to do negative 4 plus 24. And down here with the 8 and 12, it's going to be positive 8 and positive 12. And if we look real closely at the problem, we have only pluses in them. So that means that this one is not going to be a possibility because it has a minus in it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to split the middle. So we've got x squared and the plus 96. And what then we have is we're going to have plus 8x plus 12x. And here's our group. And here's our group. Greatest common factor in the first group is x, the lowest exponent. X squared divided by x is x. We had two x's, we took out one. 8x divided by x is 8. We had one x, we took it out. This sign, really important. Greatest common factor in the next group is actually 12. And sometimes you want a calculator on these. 12x divided by 12 is x. 96 divided by 12 is 8. And what we've got is we've got x plus 8. So we've got x plus 8. And then we have x plus 12. Back to problems that have a number in front of the n squared in this case. Again, we've talked about it. It doesn't matter what variable we use, but we're going to start by taking 6 times 2, which is 12. And our factors are 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And we're looking for what combines to be 11. And in fact, it was the first set of factors that we wrote down. And it would be 1 minus 11, because combined means it either adds or subtracts to b. So when we fill this in, we've got 6n squared minus 2. And then we've got plus 1n minus 12n. And then we can group. And the greatest common factor in the first group is n, the smallest exponent. 6 and 1 don't have anything in common, so 6n squared divided by n is 6n, and 1n divided by 1 is 1, and we must write the 1 down. It's really important. Don't lose track of this sign. That is also really important. The greatest common factor between 12 and 2, it's the biggest number that divides into both of those, which is 2. And negative 12n divided by negative 2 is 6n. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1. The signs are really important because we want to get those parentheses to be the same. So we've got 6n plus 1 for both of the parentheses, and then n minus 2. And there's our factor. Number 9, no number in front of the x squared. So as we take a closer look at this, when we start, we're going to do 1 times 16, which is 16. And the factors are 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. And we want this to combine to be 8, either add or subtract to be 8. So in this case, we're going to have negative 4 and negative 4. So we have x squared minus 4x minus 4x. There's the middle, those two minus 4x's, plus 16. We split the middle, and now we're actually jumping into our factoring. The greatest common factor in the first group is x, the smallest exponent. X squared divided by x is x. We had two x's, we took out one. 4x divided by x is 4. We had one x, we took it out. Again, if you've been watching this, all of the videos, you know that that sign is really important. I say it over and over again. Our greatest common factor is a 4. Negative 4x divided by negative 4 is x. Positive 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. And what we end up with is what's the same in both parentheses is x minus 4. And then what's the same, well, not the same, is x minus 4. So we end up, and that's how I usually write it. If you wanted to write it as x minus 4 quantity squared, that's okay. I tend to write it like that. Back to problem number 10. We're going to multiply our 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4. The factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. We want these to combine to be 3, so we're going to use those. And in fact, it's going to have to be negative 1 plus 4 to combine to be 3. And I haven't done it in any of the videos, but I'll do it in this one. You don't have to put the numbers down in the same order, because I usually write minus 1x plus 4x. Well, we can write plus 4x minus 1x. So I changed it around a little bit. You don't have to do that, but just for a little bit of a change of pace. I've talked about it, but I haven't done it. But now that we look at this, in the greatest common factor between the 4's, those are greatest common factors. And then between x squared and x, it's the lowest exponent, which is x. And then 4x squared divided by 4x is 1x. 4 divided by 4 is 1. X squared divided by x is x. We had two x's, we took out 1. 4x divided by 4x is 1. And again, really important that you write that 1 down. Sign as well is super important. The greatest common factor in this group is a 1. And then when we take it out, negative 1x divided by negative 1 is x. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1. And we've got x plus 1. And then we have 4x minus 1. The only thing that it does when I switch up where I put the 4x minus the 1x is I would have had written 4x minus 1 first and x plus 1 second, and both of those mean the same thing. Problem number 11. No number in front of the x squared term. 1 times 1 is 1, and our only factors of 1 are 1 and 1. And we can get them to combine to be 2 simply by doing negative 1 and negative 1. So we've got x squared plus 1 over here minus 1x minus 1x when we split the middle. Here's a group, here's a group, and we get x as our greatest common factor in the first group. We're left with x minus 1. Again, writing that minus 1 is really important. Writing that sign down, really important. Greatest common factor is a 1. Negative 1x divided by negative 1 is x. Positive 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. And then what we've got x minus 1 and x minus 1. And we just saw an example like this earlier. I'm fine with that answer. If you prefer, x minus 1 quantity squared. And to finish, one last time, don't forget all of the other factoring techniques that we've learned, because in this particular problem here, what we need to notice is that there's a GCF. There's a greatest common factor. We're going to take out that greatest common factor, which happens to be 2 in this particular problem. When we factor that out, 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. 10x divided by 2 is 5x. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. And then the nice part about this is that even though we still have to split the middle, there's no number in front of the x squared term. I'm going to put in the brackets. If you've been watching the videos, you've seen me do that before. And actually, I'm going to erase this over here because I want to work on my split the middle first. But it's going to be 1 times 6, which is 6. And the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. And we've got a problem here because both of those will combine to be 5. It could be either one of these answers. So let's put the signs in. It would be 1 minus 6, which will give us negative 5. And it would be negative 2 and negative 3 to give us negative 5. Well, I don't know if that helps or not, but remember that they have to combine to be negative 5, and they have to multiply to be positive 6. So combining to be negative 5, I'm getting from that term, and multiplying to be positive 6 here. 1 times negative 6, this term right here, would be negative 6. So it's not this, it's going to be this one. And once we determine that, we can finish the problem. I like the brackets for separation. It's up to you whether you use them. Just don't forget that the 2 is one of the factors in this problem. Then we have minus 2x, minus 3x. And here's a group and here's a group. Our 2 is still out there, but the greatest common factor in the first group is an x. And if we take that out, x squared divided by x is x. 2x divided by x is 2. Over here in our second group, 3 is the greatest common factor. Don't forget that sign, because negative 3x divided by negative 3 is positive x. Positive 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. And then we've got x minus 2 from our parentheses. We have x minus 3. And then what we did at the start is we factored out the greatest common factor of 2.